This is Everyday Tension. Real stories based on real experiences about everyday conflicts people rarely talk about. This story was shared anonymously. If you'd like, you can support the channel by liking or subscribing and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Here's what happened.
When my mother-in-law first said she needed to stay with us for a little while, I told myself it would be fine. Everyone says that, I know. But you have to believe it. My husband Mark explained it over dinner one night. His mum's condo had a major pipe leak, flooding the whole place. The restoration would take at least 2 months. Where else could she go? He looked at me with that face, the one he uses when he's already decided but needs me to agree. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What was I supposed to say? She arrived on a Tuesday with 3 large suitcases and a set of decorative pillows. I remember thinking that was odd. Who brings their own pillows for a temporary stay? She hugged Mark for a long time. When she turned to me, it was a quicker, drier embrace. "Thank you for having me," she said. Her voice was light, pleasant. "I promise I won't be a bother." I smiled and told her it was no bother at all. That was the first lie. The guest room is right next to our bedroom. It's a nice room. I put fresh sheets on the bed and cleared out some drawer space. She stood in the doorway, surveying it. She nodded, slowly. "It'll do," she said. Then she added, "The light in here is a bit harsh, don't you think?" I looked at the lamp. It was the same lamp we'd always had. I said I could find a different bulb. That first week was a dance of politeness. I'd get up early for work, and she'd already be in the kitchen, sipping tea, reading something on her tablet. "Morning, dear," she'd say. "You look tired. Long night?" It was always something like that, an observation disguised as concern. I'd just shrug and make my coffee. She watched me. I could feel her eyes on my back as I moved around the kitchen. She'd comment on the brand of coffee I bought, or the type of milk I used. Mark never used to drink oat milk, she'd muse. He always liked whole milk, real milk. I'd just say, people change. Mark works late sometimes. He's an architect, and when a deadline is close, he's at the office until 8 or 9. Those were the hardest moves in the world, but where we can find ourselves. She'd suggest watching a show together. She'd pick something, usually a period drama I had no interest in. She'd talk through the whole thing, explaining the historical context, guessing what would happen next. I'd sit there, nodding, counting the minutes until I could reasonably say I was going to bed. My bathroom is my thing. That's the only way to put it. Our house has 2 full bathrooms. One is attached to our bedroom, and that's mine. Mark has his own sink and stuff in there, but it's understood. The space around the bathtub, the shelves, the counter, that's my territory. It's where I go to shut the world out. A long day at the office, I'm a paralegal. It's just paper and stress, and people talking in low voices. When I get home, a hot bath is what fixes it. Not even a bath sometimes. Just sitting in there, with the door locked, breathing in the quiet. I have nice things in there. Not insanely expensive, but things I saved up for. A set of skincare products from a brand I really like. They come in heavy glass jars and smell like rosemary and mint. I have thick, white towels I bought on a trip to Portland. A specific essential oil blend for headaches. A soft, terry cloth robe hanging on the back of the door. It's a system. It works for me. She asked about my bathroom once, just casually. "You spend a lot of time in there," she said over dinner. "Everything okay?" Mark chuckled and said, "That's just her decompression chamber." I didn't like him calling it that. It made it sound like a weird hobby. I just said I like to take baths. The first time I noticed something was off was a Thursday. I came home from work, went straight to my bathroom. I needed to wash my face. The air felt different, humid, and there was a scent, not my rosemary and mint, something else. Something floral and sweet, lilac maybe. I looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. But my towel was damp. Not soaking wet, but damp, like someone had used it and then hung it back up neatly. I stood there holding it. I felt a knot form in my stomach. I walked out and found her in the living room, knitting. "Did you use my bathroom?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice level. She didn't look up from her knitting. "Oh, just to pop in and use the loo." The other bathroom was occupied. Mark had been in the shower in the whole bathroom, I remembered. "I hope that's all right," she said, finally glancing at me. Her expression was blank, innocent. It's fine," I said. "Maybe just ask next time?" "Of course, dear," she said, and went back to her knitting. I didn't believe her. The damp towel, the smell. She'd done more than just use the loo, but I let it go. I didn't want to start a fight over a damp towel. I told myself I was being possessive. It was just a room. A few days later, I saw my bathrobe hanging in a different spot. I always hang it on the hook behind the door. It was on the towel rack. And it smelled like that lilac scent again. I didn't say anything. I felt stupid. How do you accuse someone of using your bathrobe? It sounds petty. So I washed the robe. I washed the towel. I put everything back. Then came the day I found the spa. It was a Wednesday. I'd had a particularly brutal day. A filing deadline got moved up, and I'd spent 8 hours in a panic, compiling documents, getting signatures. My head was pounding. All I could think about was my bath. I drove home in silence. No music. I just wanted the water, the quiet, the smell of my oils. I walked into the house. It was quiet. Mark was still at work. I didn't see my mother-in-law. Good, I thought. I can just disappear for an hour. I pushed open the door to my bedroom, and then the bathroom door. The heat hit me first. A wall of moist, perfumed steam. The room was dim, lit only by the low, flickering light of what looked like every candle I owned. They were on the counter, the edge of the tub, the windowsill. My expensive candles, the ones I saved for special occasions, were half melted. Soft, tinkling spa music was playing from my Bluetooth speaker, which was sitting on the closed toilet lid. The air was thick with the scent of my essential oils, not blended for a headache, but the expensive lavender and ylang-ylang ones I used maybe twice a year. And there she was, my mother-in-law. She was in my bathtub, up to her neck in bubbles. My bubbles. Her head was tipped back against my bath pillow. Her eyes were closed. One of my white Portland towels was wrapped around her hair like a turban. Another was draped over the side of the tub. My bathrobe was waiting for her on the vanity stool. My skincare jars were open, their contents smeared on a small plate like fancy appetizers. I just stood there. My hand was still on the doorknob. I felt my heart beating in my throat. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't popping in to use the loo. This was a full-scale occupation. She must have sensed me. Her eyes fluttered open. She didn't jump. She didn't look startled or guilty. She smiled, a slow, relaxed, smug smile. "Oh, hello, dear," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the tiled room. "You're home early." I couldn't speak. I looked around the room again, at my things, my private things, all deployed for her pleasure. "I hope you don't mind," she continued, lifting a hand out of the water to gesture vaguely. "I had a bit of an ache in my back. I thought I'd pamper myself. I must say, you have excellent taste. These oils are divine." "Get out," I said. My voice came out quiet, strained. "Pardon? Get out of my bath. Get out of my bathroom." This time, it was louder. It didn't sound like my voice. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of mild annoyance, like I was a child interrupting her nap. she sighed, a long, suffering sound. Really? There's no need for that tone. I was just making the house feel more luxurious. You should try it. You seem so tense all the time. I turned around. I walked out of the bathroom, out of the bedroom. I went downstairs and sat at the kitchen table. I put my head in my hands. I felt hot tears of frustration pricking my eyes. I didn't cry. I just sat there, breathing heavily, listening to the faint sound of spa music drifting down the hall. About 20 minutes later, I heard her come downstairs. She walked into the kitchen, my bathrobe cinched tightly around her. Her skin was pink. She smelled strongly of my products. "You are too sensitive," she announced, going to the kettle. "It's a bathroom. It's meant to be used. I was just using it." "You used everything," I said, looking up at her. "My things, my personal things, without asking." "Asking?" She laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Should I have submitted a formal request? Dear, we're family. We share. I was just trying to relax. You should be happy. I'm making myself at home." "That's the problem," I said, standing up. "You are making yourself at home. In my home. In my space." She shook her head, as if I was speaking a foreign language. She made her tea and left the room. When Mark got home, I was still at the kitchen table. He knew immediately something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, putting his bag down. I told him. I described walking in, the candles, the music, her in the tub, wrapped in my things. I told him how it felt. Violated. That was the word. I felt violated. He listened. He rubbed his forehead. "Okay," he said. "Okay. That's not great." "Not great? Mark, she invaded the one place I have to myself." "I know. They know," he said, his voice the low, calming one he uses to de-escalate. "She was wrong. She shouldn't have done that. But you know how she is. She doesn't see boundaries the way we do. To her, sharing a bathroom is just what family does." "This wasn't sharing," I said, my voice cracking. "This was a takeover." And she smiled about it. He pulled out a chair and sat next to me. "Look," he said, "she's going to be here for a few more weeks. The restoration is almost done. Can we just get through it? For me, I'll talk to her. I'll tell her your bathroom is off limits." "You said that before," I reminded him. "After the damp towel incident. I'll be firmer," he promised. He put his hand over mine. "Please, just let it go this time. For peace. Starting a war over bath oils isn't worth it." I looked at him. His face was tired. He'd been working so hard. The last thing he needed was drama between his wife and his mother. I felt my resolve weaken. The desire for peace, for quiet, is a powerful thing. It's easier to swallow anger than to let it out. "Fine," I said softly. "But she can't go in there again. Not for any reason." "Absolutely," he said. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "Thank you." He did talk to her. I heard them the next morning. Their voices were low in the living room. I stood in the hallway, out of sight. "Mum, you really crossed a line," Mark said. "Oh, for heaven's sake. It was a bath. It was her space. Her things. You need to respect that. That bathroom is hers. Don't go in there again." There was a long pause. Then I heard her sigh. "If she's going to be that possessive about a room, fine. I'll use the common bathroom, though it's nowhere near as nice. But if it keeps the peace, thank you." Mark said. I went back to the kitchen. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. I felt like I'd won a technicality, not the argument. The principle was still broken. She thought I was being possessive, She didn't understand why it mattered. And because she didn't understand, the resentment didn't go away. It just settled deeper inside me, cold and hard. For a week, it was okay. She avoided my bathroom. I came home, and my things were where I left them. The air smelled like my soap, not her lilac. But the atmosphere in the house was worse. She was politely cold. She'd answer questions with one-word replies. She'd make her own meals and eat them in her room. She was playing the martyr. The woman whose daughter-in-law banned her from a bathroom. Mark felt it too. He'd tried to make conversation at dinner, but it would die quickly. "How was your day, Mum?" "Fine." He'd look at me, a silent plea in his eyes to try harder. I'd ask about her book. She'd just say, "It's fine." The tension was a third person in the room, sitting with us, eating with us. Then, her book club. She hosted it every other Thursday. It was a point of pride for her. She'd bake scones, brew a pot of her special herbal tea blend, and hold court in our living room with 5 other women from her neighborhood. She'd asked, early on, if it was all right to have it here. Mark had enthusiastically said yes. I'd agreed, wanting to be supportive. The book club was the highlight of her social calendar. She'd talk about it for days beforehand, what she was baking, what she thought of the book, what so-and-so was likely to say. It was her performance. Her chance to be the sophisticated hostess. The Thursday after the spa incident, I came home from work to a flurry of activity. She was in the kitchen, pulling scones out of the oven. The house smelled of butter and baking. She was humming. She seemed happy, in her element. She didn't acknowledge me when I walked in. I went upstairs. My bathroom was untouched. I checked. Everything was in order. I changed out of my work clothes. As I sat on the edge of my bed, I could hear her downstairs, clattering dishes, getting ready. The knot in my stomach was back. This woman had marched into the one place I felt safe and made it hers. She had laughed at me. She had made me feel crazy for being upset, and my husband had asked me to let it go. I looked at myself in the bedroom mirror. I looked tired. I felt tired. Tired of being polite. Tired of swallowing my anger. Tired of her winning. That's when I thought of it. Not a grand plan, not at first, just a flicker. She was so proud of her book club, her perfect little gathering. What if it wasn't perfect? It wasn't about cruelty. I need to make that clear. It wasn't that I wanted to hurt her. I wanted her to understand, to feel a fraction of the violation I'd felt, to have something she cared about, something she controlled, be invaded and turned into a joke. I needed the scales to balance, even just a little. The plan formed quietly in the back of my mind over the next hour. It was simple, specific, deniable. I waited until she was in the shower, the hall shower, not mine. I heard the water running. I went downstairs. The kitchen was a mess of flour and baking trays. On the counter was her tin of special herbal tea, a custom blend she ordered from a shop in town. Calming chamomile citrus, the label said. She bragged about it to her friends. I took the tin. I went to the pantry. We had tea, lots of tea. In the back, behind the coffee beans, I found a box of laxative tea I bought once when I was constipated after a course of antibiotics. It was strong stuff. Smooth Move, it was called. I'd used it once and spent the next 6 hours regretting it. I opened her tin. The tea inside was a mix of chamomile and orange peel. I emptied about half of it into a plastic bag. Then I took the laxative tea bags. They were a different shape, but in hot water, who looks that closely, and I mixed them in with her remaining tea. I filled the tin back up. I put the bag of her real tea in the bottom of the kitchen trash, under some coffee grounds. Next, the bathroom. Her bathroom. The hall one. I went in. On the edge of the tub was a ceramic jar of bath salts. They were pink and smelled like roses. A gift, she'd said, from one of her friends. I took the jar to my bedroom. I had a stash of craft supplies in the closet from a failed scrapbooking phase. Among them was a tube of cosmetic-grade glitter. Fine, iridescent powder. The kind that gets everywhere and sticks to everything. I poured about a third of the bath salts into the sink. Then I shook a generous amount of glitter into the jar and stirred it around with a pencil. I put it back on the tub. The glitter was subtle, mixed in with the pink salts. You wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. Finally, the speaker. My Bluetooth speaker was back on my bathroom counter. She hadn't used it since that day. I picked it up. I paired it with my phone. I went to a sound effects website. I found a track called Amazon Rainforest Ambience. It was 30 minutes of relentless jungle noise. Birds shrieking, monkeys howling, insects buzzing, the constant patter of rain. I set it as the only track in a new playlist. I unpaired my phone and put the speaker back. She would never think to check the playlist. She just hit play, expecting her usual spa music. I did all of this methodically, quietly. My heart was beating fast, but my hands were steady. It felt like I was finally doing something, instead of just feeling something. I wasn't screaming or throwing things. I was just rearranging the pieces of her evening. The doorbell rang at 7. Her friends had arrived. I stayed upstairs. I heard the greetings, the light laughter, the rustle of coats. I sat on my bed, listening. I heard the kettle whistle. I imagined her pouring the hot water over the teas in her fancy pot. I felt a cold thrill of anticipation and guilt, a sharp slice of it. This was mean. It was childish. I pushed the guilt down. She didn't feel guilty, I told myself. She felt entitled. The book club part lasted about 45 minutes. I heard the low murmur of conversation, occasional laughter. Then, the usual transition. "Shall we move to more comfortable seating?" she would say. "I've drawn some baths if anyone would like to relax." That was her signature move. Offering her guests a turn in the bath with her fancy salts. She'd done it every time. I heard the footsteps on the stairs. The bathroom door across the hall opened and closed. The whole bathroom, not mine. Good. A few minutes later, I heard the first click of the speaker turning on. Then, silence for a second. Then, the jungle erupted. It was louder than I'd imagined, a cacophony of shrieks and buzzes and chitters pouring out of the small speaker. It was so absurd, so completely out of place in our suburban home, that I almost laughed. I heard a confused exclamation from downstairs, then a woman's voice, raised in surprise. "Evelyn, what on earth is that noise?" Footsteps hurried up the stairs. I opened my bedroom door just a crack. I saw my mother-in-law standing outside the hall bathroom door, looking bewildered. The jungle sounds were blaring from within. I don't know, she said, her voice flustered. "The speaker must be malfunctioning." She opened the bathroom door and went in. The sounds got even louder for a moment before she must have yanked the plug. Sudden silence. She came out, red-faced. "Technical difficulties," she said with a forced laugh to the women who had gathered at the bottom of the stairs. "So sorry. The music is off for tonight." They went back downstairs, but the mood was broken. I could hear it in their voices. Less laughter, more murmuring. About 15 minutes later, the real chaos began. I heard a woman say, quite urgently, "Evelyn, where is your restroom?" "Down the hall, dear. First door on the left," my mother-in-law replied. A minute later, another woman asked the same question. Then a third. I stayed in my room. I pictured it. The laxative tea working its way through their systems. They'd be confused at first, then concerned, then desperate. I heard the whole bathroom door open and close, open and close. The flush of the toilet, over and over. I heard one of the women say she wasn't feeling well. and thought she should go home. My mother-in-law's voice was strained, trying to maintain control. "Oh, do stay for one more cup," but the woman insisted. Then from downstairs, a different kind of exclamation, more shocked than sick. "Evelyn, my skin! What is this?" I walked to the top of the stairs and looked down. One of the women was standing under the hall light, holding her arm out. It sparkled. A fine, iridescent glitter coated her skin from wrist to elbow. It caught the light, shimmering pink and gold. She looked like a disco ball. "It's from the bath salts," she said, her voice a mix of horror and disbelief. "It won't come off." Another woman looked at her own hands. They too were glittering. "Mine too! It's everywhere!" My mother-in-law was frozen in the middle of the living room, holding a tray of untouched scones. Her face was pale. She looked from one glittering friend to another. She looked at the hallway where a woman was emerging from the bathroom, looking pale and unsteady. She looked, for the first time since she'd arrived, completely and utterly lost. The perfect hostess, the sophisticated lady. Her book club was falling apart in the most bizarre, undignified way possible. It was chaos. It was itchy, uncomfortable, mildly panicked chaos. It was glorious. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. A deep, quiet calm I hadn't felt in weeks. The women left quickly after that. There were hurried goodbyes, promises to call, expressions of concern that weren't entirely kind. The door closed behind the last one. The house was silent. I walked downstairs. She was still standing in the living room, surrounded by half-empty teacups and glitter-dusted furniture. She was staring at the wall. I walked over to the couch and sat down. I didn't say anything for a minute. I just let the silence hang there. Finally, she turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide, confused. There was no smugness now, no condescension, just shock. "Did you?" she started, then stopped. "Was this you?" I looked back at her. My expression was blank. "You turned my sanctuary into your playground," I said, my voice even, quiet. "I needed you to feel what it's like when someone takes something sacred from you, when they cross a line, and just smile about it." She didn't speak. She just stared. The understanding dawned slowly on her face. It wasn't an apology in her eyes. It wasn't remorse. It was something else. Recognition, maybe. A belated understanding of cause and effect. She saw the connection between her afternoon in my tub and this disastrous evening. She finally got it. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't say anything. She just turned, picked up a few teacups, and carried them silently into the kitchen. Mark came home an hour later. The house was clean. The glitter was mostly contained to the living room rug, which we'd have to shake out for weeks. My mother-in-law was in her room with the door closed. "How was book club?" he asked, hanging up his coat. "Eventful," I said from the couch. He looked around, sensing the strange energy. "Everything okay?" "It's fine," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. She never touched my bathroom again. Not a towel, not a soap, not a drop of water. She used the hall bathroom exclusively, and she kept the door closed. She was quieter around me, not friendly, but not hostile. A sort of wary distance. She finished out her stay, which was only another 3 weeks. The day her condo was ready, she packed her 3 suitcases and her decorative pearls. Mark loaded them into her car. At the door, she turned to me. We looked at each other. There was so much that could have been said. An apology from her, an explanation from me. None of it came. The silence was the point. It was the agreement we'd reached. "Goodbye," she said. "Drive safe," I replied, and she left. Mark put his arm around me as we watched her car pull away. "Well," he sighed, "that's over." I nodded. It was over. But not really. She still comes over for holidays. We have polite, surface-level conversations. We don't talk about the book club. We don't talk about my bathroom. It's a ghost between us. A silent understanding of lines drawn and consequences dealt. Sometimes, when I'm in my bathroom, locking the door, running the bath, I think about that night. I don't feel proud of what I did, but I don't regret it either. It was what I needed to do to take my space back, to make the feeling of violation go away. It didn't make us friends. It didn't resolve anything. But it balanced the scales, just enough. Now, when I sink into the hot water, surrounded by my own smells and my own things, the quiet feels earned. It feels truly mine again. And that's all I ever wanted.